Alright guys, so this is CanCon, my first time here, and this is just one of the pavilions. There's two other ones which I'll be exploring later on today. And I'm versing Kieran, so I versed him for ATC, he was part of Team New South Wales. He's playing Daemons and a whole bunch of corn dudes. And bloodthirsters and things like that. And Samus, yeah. And so I've got all my reserves. You'll see it in other videos. And then here's my deployment, so I'm just bubbling out. Alrighty, so CanCon. I was really excited about CanCon. This is my first year going to it, and I did do a lot of preparation for it. I took my Masters list, my Australian Masters list, and then I tweaked it because there was some weaknesses in that list that I really wanted to kind of nut out. And after I don't know, about 20 games in practice, it was something that I felt was a very, very strong list, and it didn't necessarily, the list itself was strong, but it played to exactly how I like playing. I'll go more into the list in future games, just because this first game, there's a little bit of backstory we need to talk about here. So Kieran played for ACT in the last round of his main first turn. You know, he's deploying reasonably well to block off my deep strikes, but he does leave a couple of gaps. He makes a couple of charges, but I don't actually lose anything in turn one, so he doesn't get a point there. I get my half tyrants kind of on the left flank. I'm going in all his characters right in the center. A big gaps for kind of my Morlocks, and I got a 6 for my two little brothers here. And you can see I'm moving them right in, and his Warlords there in the corner. Doing my drops in, and I got to explain a little bit about the kind of the controversy that happened in this round. Which a lot of the people at CanCon already know about, and really it's because I know Kieran's a slow player. I'm trying to be on him. I'm trying to make sure he's not wasting my time and just wasting time in general. But we've got clear examples in this right now coming up where he's done it. So I've just caused 20 wounds. He's saved 4, and then instead of just saying 16 dead, he counts out these dice. Then he takes a bunch of bottles, and then he goes, oh, actually no, I want to take these other ones. And then I killed the unit, so that was about 5 minutes wasted, and that wasn't really needed. Here, this is one of the annoying portions of it, where he told me something, but that wasn't correct. I charge him on Patriarch. I don't have to actually be anywhere near his chariot. I ask him how many attacks does his chariot's got. He says 2 attacks. I then pile in. He, heroic interventions. He does his 2 attacks, and then he has a look at his book and goes, "Oh, actually, the chariot's also got 6 attacks." That's got 2 damage each, and he kills my Patriarch. Now that's something, had I been more forceful or more whatever, I would have said, no, I'm sorry, you only said it was 2 attacks, I don't care whatever the thing was, I didn't have to do it, and you've tricked me in essence. But I let him have it, and I shouldn't have. We kept on going. He's dropped in with a whole bunch of stuff. I've tried to split him up. The whole point of my army here is I haven't dropped any of my Genestealers. I just dropped my 2 Patriarchs who rolled a 6. Other than that, I'm just trying to split his demons up, cause mortal wounds through Bivors, slow him down through Spore Mines, just annoy him pretty much, because I believe I have this. I'm at the upper hand of this, especially because he didn't kill anything turn 1. So already I'm ahead in points. His what's it called? The Bloodthirster down the bottom left-hand corner. That's the one I've kind of marked for death. Like it's not his Warlord, but it's the one that that I'm looking to get a whole bunch of points from Big Game Hunter or no, the Kingslayer. That's it. He doesn't manage to kill my Hive Tyrant. I use a reroll to save on the 4+ invulnerable. He's down to like 6 wounds, but he's killed 1 Hive Tyrant, killed a Morlock, but that's about it. There's things I'm happy to bleed. You can see his positioning of his Bloodthirsters. They're all in his backfield or well away from my 9 Bivors, and every turn I'm causing 5 to 6 mortal wounds to any target pretty much I want. Generally it's the closest one, so I'm not getting -1 to hit, but other than that, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to be killing him. I get the 6. Well, I got 3d6 with rerolls, but I get the 6 on the Genestealers. I kill his Bloodthirster at the back left. He's got all his reserves are down, and now it's just about slowing him down from my base, and just cleaning up the board pretty much. And that's how this game goes now. We're starting to run out of time. Like we've just hit turn 3, and I think we've got about 25 minutes to go, something like that. And I'm trying to push him along, and we're not necessarily now at the moment playing slow, because I'm pushing much more forcefully. But other than that, that's how this game goes. So you just, when you're versing demons, and especially melee demons, you want them split and you want them scattered across the board, because you can then deal with it one by one. He pushes in. Scarbrand is the one that's right near my base. He's only got on 3 wounds left, and there's a heroic Spore Mine that's about to do some wonderful things in a second. Here, another Bloodthirster comes down. His chariot comes along. He's got a little bit of shooting, and he's killed most of those Genestealers. The Nurglings annoyingly saved through either Disgusting Resilience or Invulnerable save against my Warlord Patriarch, and I have to spend resources to finish those Nurglings off, otherwise they're just going to annoy me the rest of the game, especially because Kieran picked Recon. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Rather than the Patriarch being able to push forward, I have to kill those the Nurglings, which does slow me down a little bit, and that does come into play in turn 4. So Kieran's going, he's doing his 4th turn right now, which ends up being the last turn, because when we finish turn 4, we have less than 5 minutes to go. And had I been a bit more forceful, I would have said, no, we're pushing forward. We're going to be finishing turn 5. And had I had, say, 5 or 10 more minutes in the round, it was a foregone conclusion. I do everything I can to try and drop that Bloodthirster. It's actually on, I think it was like on 2 wounds left at the end of that big hit. And unfortunately, I didn't get the kill for that round, like the turn. In an ITC, that getting a kill is 1 point. And it turns out that we are actually 1 point. So Kieran is 1 point ahead of me. So had I killed that Bloodthirster, I would have got 1 point for the kill, and 1 point for Big Game Hunter, which means I would have won the game. And next turn, it was guaranteed. And the one thing against the hero Spore Mine against Scarbrand, he rolled a 6 on the explosion table. And I used a CP reroll, but I got the 3 wounds and then killed that Scarbrand that was threatening my base, so that was pretty fun. Unfortunately, the game ended with 1 point loss, which annoyed me, not so much that I lost, but it annoyed me more because I would have to then submarine for the rest of the tournament, where I really wanted to test this Tyranid army against, the best players. I didn't mind versing nothing but like the best players in Australia.
Alrighty, round 2 of CanCon. So I would have talked about what happened in round 1, but we move on, and round 2, and I'm versing Michael. He's a new player. I haven't played him. Sorry, he's not a new player. I haven't played him before, which is why I come to these big tournaments, to verse people I haven't played. And we've got Space Wolves with Murderfang, and who else you got in here? You got Wolfen and I don't know, a whole bunch of dudes. There we go. And I'm hiding right in the center with my deployment, and everything else is in reserve. So we're mission 2. This will be interesting.
Alrighty, so game 2, and I'm playing Michael. So I met him at Orange for the Battle in the Bush, but we didn't actually verse each other. And I haven't played Space Wolves before. That's a lie. I played one with my Harlequins, and it was interesting. But he was running a lot more what they call the dreadnoughts with the big shield and big axe thing, whereas Michael, he was running Bloodfang or Murderfang or some claw guy, which was hilarious because he drops him right in the center here. You'll see it in a second, and because it's a ruin, he can't get out. So it's kind of like that Marvel character where it's like, I'm not locked in here. You're locked in here with me. Anyway, that was a terrible joke. It doesn't make a difference. So deployment here, because he was Michael was telling me pretty much his whole army can outflank. I deploy right in the center of the board to just minimize any damage that he can do, and that's what happens pretty much. I think Michael may have killed one Bivor, I'm not 100% sure. My Morlocks come in, I cause some damage, I just go for the Alpha Strike to hit him back. I'm using some Morlocks on his main base to slow him down, so I don't care if that Morlock dies, it's slowing his main army down in both his back base, which is the bottom of the screen, and on the left hand side. He leaves this Harold Deathwolf guy. The reasoning that Michael said to me was he was trying to bait some of my army over to him. But I've got a lot of mortal wounds, so even though he's hard to kill, mortal wounds just go straight through him. So my two Hive Tyrants casting Smite and Shriek, it's in that top ruin, you can't, it's just cut off on the screen. Smite, Strike, Stream, and Bivors kills him pretty easily, so the bait didn't really work to what Michael wanted. But yeah, for Michael, it's very hard for him now to win, because I've kind of stopped his main push, so his big outflank. I'm in his base killing his dudes. That's a wonderful meme that I still remember. And really his damage has been blunted. So pretty much just going over it, when you're versing this type of Alpha Strike army, just like in game 1, you're trying to split them up, stop the aggression as quickly as possible, and then start controlling the outcome. And that's what I really enjoy about my list. Because of the way I deploy, where I get to in essence have 10 things off the board before I put so in essence I get to see their army. I get to understand what their game plan is. I get to dictate that a little bit, not so much in ITC where objective placement is set, but when we go to say ETC, where you can place objectives, you use objective placement as well to kind of control the board, and you want to stop. You want to work out how you're going to stop the aggression through deployment, through objectives, through movement, and then you strike back at the same time. Because there's no point in just being defensive, defensive, defensive. You have to be able to be aggressive, because there are going to be armies such as Dark Reaper spam, which can be more defensive than you. So like the very last game where I'm versing Jeremy, who actually wins all of CanCon, his army is a very defensive army that can sit back and shoot you all day and will always beat you at that, and has one unit that can go out and be aggressive. So you cannot win the game against that type of army by just being defensive. It has to be, the defensiveness allows you to pick and choose when you are offensive. Now, this might sound a little vague, or I'm not trying to be vague, it's just, this is kind of how I think. And it seems to work. And you have to build a list that allows you to do that. You can't build a, fully aggressive, like this Space Wolf list. This is an aggressive Space Wolf list. You can't build this aggressive Space Wolf list and then play defensively. It doesn't. I don't think it really works. Anyway, so that was that game, and we're moving on to game 3. All right, round 3. Big CanCon, Pavilion 3, versing a new player to me, James. Say hello. And he is playing lots of chaos, but not a demon in sight, which is awesome. He's got a Badin back here, and a whole bunch of other dudes. I've just spread out in my backfield here. We're playing table quarters. Rest of my reserves. Alright, and he's trying to decide if he wants to go first or second. Alrighty, so as you saw in the intro, this army actually looks like a chaos army. Where you got cultists, you got predators, land raiders, defilers, like a mix of stuff. You got Badin in there, kind of helping out. So I was really excited in actually playing this army and playing this game, and I was trying to think about, what do I do? So I talked about in the last game. My army is defensive, which allows me to pick and choose where I be offensive. And I think I made a mistake in my turn 1 when I only drop in my Hive Tyrants, because I'm using the Hive Tyrants to clear screens. Okay, because I need to. He's bubble wrapped reasonably well, and I need to clear the screen to get a gap for my Genestealers to kind of dive in. But Hive Tyrants, as I found out, because I haven't really played against Killshot with the Predator stratagem, Killshot is actually fantastic. Getting +1 to wound and +1 damage for, I think it's only like 1 or 2 CP is crazy awesome. So I dropped in my 2 Hive Tyrants, but I should have also dropped in at least 1 Morlock kind of on that objective. And I think my 2 Patriarchs, I call them the Brothers Grimm, I probably could have dropped them in too, behind this piece of ruin, and even if they didn't get a charge in, they would just kind of hide out in that ruin. It would have just given a bit more pressure, which I think I really could have used in this game, because I don't think I gave enough pressure when I just drop in my 2 Hive Tyrants. I clear most of the screen, but then his Predators just smash both Hive Tyrants like they were nothing. The Bibles did work, Morlocks doing what Morlocks do, but I think that was a mistake on my behalf. I did now, though, the Hive Tyrants did clear the screen, which now meant that I got gaps, and you can see me marking out. I got the 6 on the on the Genestealers. I'm diving in. Abaddon is just on the other side of that wall, so near the top Morlock, there's Abaddon right there. So I think it was only like a 7-inch charge, something like that. Maybe it was an 8. Anyway, I make it in, and I'm doing a multi-charge, and I do it I believe in the right order to minimize casualties on the Genestealers. So there you go. You just saw Abaddon when we lifted up the ruin. Yeah. So now I'm doing the hip. I don't have the Hive Tyrants. To clear out, there's one more screen on the left-hand side of his army that I didn't clear out, which actually stopped me from capping all the objectives, and it keeps him in the game. That screen, those troops, keep him in the game all the way to the end. Byballers do what Byballers do, closest target being the Defiler, just shooting that all day long. I lock myself in combat with the Genestealers. So this is a little bit of not a tricky thing, but just like an advanced tactic if you don't want your Genestealers to get shot at. With vehicles, especially weird shaped vehicles, if you kind of get on a couple of sides of it, so I had to get onto one side of the leg and then the other side of the leg, and then in the middle, like in 3 points of contact on 3 different directions, you can kind of lock a vehicle in combat, which is really, really important to not lose all your Genestealers in the next shooting phase with a million bolters and las guns and all that type of stuff. I'm sacrificing my Morlocks, saying, hey, shoot me. When they finally do die, the Morlocks die, they leave a nice gap for when that's for me to charge through. So this is another advanced tactic for running this type of list, or something like Simon Weekly's list, where he's got 7 Hive Tyrants, with 5 of them being melee ones. Where the Morlock pops up, when they finally do kill that Morlock, that now leaves a perfect gap for your Hive Tyrant to fly in. So it creates space for you, which is really useful. Sometimes they can spread out everywhere except for your one model, but a Morlock space is big enough to fit a Hive Tyrant base within and still have 1 inch around. So you can have a Morlock, it dies, and then you fly the Hive Tyrant right where that Morlock was. So again, it's just adding the pressure gives you space. The defensiveness of the deployment and the army allows you to pick and choose when your aggression actually hits. And then it's all down to if you've done everything right, you now can grind them out. Because you've got big monsters, because you've got 5 up, feel no pain, 5 up invulnerable and 6 up feel no pain Genestealers. you can hopefully grind out your opponent to a point that when they get near the end game, they just can't push through the rest of your army. And spore mines are great for that, because even if you miss, you've now got smite catches, you've got movement blockers, that type of thing. What else can we talk about? I'll just let it play out a little bit. I don't want to waste your time with insipid commentary if it's not added. One of the interesting bits here is his Predator explodes, and he actually chooses to do the reroll on the explosion. So he chooses not to explode it, because if it had exploded, there's a bunch of characters of mine, but also a bunch of characters of his around that are down to like 1 or 2 wounds. So that explosion would have hurt both of us pretty much just as much as each other, and it would have been hilarious, but not so good. I did get a mind control off on his Land Raider to kill one of his predators, which was really nice, or wound it very significantly. And that's pretty much it. So that part of the army there is, I don't care if all of that dies, I'm still on objectives. I've got Bivores to try and kill a unit a turn alongside with the rest of my army. I've got numerous amounts of psychic sources and denial sources, mortal wound generation. So just like in my Masters discussion, I've got 2 main damage types. I've got no AP DAC effects, DAC Hive Tyrant, and then I've got mortal wounds. And they're like, strength 6, no AP versus mortal wounds through Morlocks, through Bivores, through Spore Mines, and through Smites. I did add that close combat element, so I do have neg 1/neg 4, or the Patriarchs is neg 3/neg 6. But that's only in close combat, so no shooting AP.
Alrighty, day 2, round 4 of CanCon. Lots of players, and I'm versing Lee Connor again, so we played in Masters. He's playing a similar-ish list, but swapping out the Yukon for a bunch of jet bikes. So if you want to see how that game went Masters, you can go watch. As you know, I'm running a similar-ish list, but swapping out some of my Tyranids for Genestealer Cult. So we'll see if our changes made this game any different or not. Should be fun.
Alright, so playing Lee again, and similar to our game at Masters, I get to go, please deploy your army, pretty much. 10 things in reserve. I get to see where he's putting everything. This scenario, I think this is scenario 4, you actually get to place your objective, which is not like a fixed placement, which means I got to place one of mine behind, like in between 2 line of sight blocking pieces of terrain, and I use that. If you remember a couple of games ago, you can use objective placement to bait your opponent, but you can also use it to kind of force their hand. That's a bad way to describe it, but it's just to dictate the gameplay or dictate the game plan. Lee deployed his army. He only had 2 units near his objective. I had, a couple of Bivores near my objective, and but I spread it around across the board because I said I'm not sure how this game is going to go. I really want to see where he drops his Wraith Guard, because that was a big thing in our Masters game, because he held them off, and that meant I got to push him back through my reserves. This time he chose not to do that, and he drops them right in the front. He's really aggressive with them, and he's sitting on my side of the board, which I think, like post game after we're talking about it, was the absolute correct decision to do. Because I had to deal with them, and really the only thing that's going to be dealing with those is the Genestealers, especially because he's got intercepting jet bikes, and they will kill a lot, and I'm talking a lot of Genestealers. So I'm hiding my Genestealers from his jet bikes. I'm using my Genestealers back here to try and get to his Wraith Guard. Unfortunately, I rolled a 5, not a 6. and I didn't do a reroll, and I only got a 1-inch movement. So I've got a 8-inch charge, which in a moment I'm going to be failing, which really hurts. My Hive Tyrants and so I got really terrible uprisings this game. My 2 brother Patriarchs came on, I think I rolled like a 1 or a 2. They came on that side. They didn't really achieve much until turn, I think, 4. They didn't do anything. They just ran onto objective and then pushed into his army. But it wasn't until turn 4 they actually got into combat. And I brought them in turn 1. My Genestealers, they got into combat turn 2, but they were severely depleted. So this game was much better for Lee. Foreshadowing the ends, he did lose this game, but when my army is very focused on beating elite armies. Now Lee had way more models than, I say, a typical elite army, which was great. And I don't think he's running any Dark Reapers, which is even more awesome. And he's got some Harlequins. He's running a true Ynarri army, where he's got Harlequins, he's got Dark Eldar troops, he's got Eldar Wraithguard, what are they called? The Rangers, etc. A little bit of discussion about ITC secondaries, and I talked to a number of the Queensland guys prior to the tournament, where objectives such as Line Breaker, Recon, things like that, where they dictate your gameplay, I don't really like. I personally think not so much they're a trap, that they're not worth taking, because you sometimes have to make a choice about getting that 1 point versus winning the game. And most of the time, getting that 1 point won't win you the game, whereas moving to a certain position and getting to a certain combat will win you the game, but just in a turn or two. And the perfect example was back on turn 1. You saw where Lee dropped in the middle. Because he chose Recon, and his Wraithguard, he had 1 model in this bottom right table quarter, or left hand side of me. But then he used Fire and Fade to push into the rocks, because he wanted to make it harder for me to charge, which I believe was the correct decision. Holding that kind of pushing towards my objective and not worrying about Recon made it harder for me to kill those Wraithguard, which he never got Recon. This whole game he chose Recon as a secondary, but he never got it. And I don't, unless it's a guaranteed some way. I'm sure there's armies that can guarantee it, all 4 points, but I really don't like running Recon. Line Break especially, you might get 1 or 2 points, but you'll get to where you want to go for a third turn and you've run out of units, or the units that you could go for, you really need to deal with something else. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of those. I prefer a 3-point headhunter, so just an ordinary warlord, and getting 3 points off that, over a potential 4-point recon, but more likely a 2-point recon, because those other 2 turns you need that unit to do something. And I mean, this is my philosophy. I'm sure someone who has more experience in ITC missions has a counter offer, but this has been proven in our gaming group a number of times. Let's talk about the rest of the game. So I completely whiff on my combat against his Wraithguard. Wraithguard are actually pretty good in combat. They got -1 base to hit with I think it's D3 damage each. They can fall back out of combat and still shoot. So yeah, Wraithguard, really nice when they're buffed up, and so they're more defensive, also really nice. And I couldn't afford to focus on them. Like, I could have dropped my Hive Tyrants in and try to shoot them and do my Psychic Screech and all that, but then the rest of his army gets a free reign. And I need those Hive Tyrants to shoot his bikes. So my first turn I drop in to kill as many transports as possible, and kill troops and transports. My next turn I fly up, I kill all the bikes, and then the Hive Tyrants are now just causing havoc. Because once I've killed the bikes, that kills most of... it's the fast shooty part of his list. I'm dropping in Warlocks, just causing, being annoying, causing mortal wounds here and there. Anyway, it ends, I think we're turn 5, it ends turn 5.
Alright, we are now game 5 of CanCon. Just showing the board. Versing Shannon. I met him in Orange, and I'm versing his Necrons. Lots of fun goodness. So this is my second game against Necrons in 8th, so this will be interesting. Spread out across the board. We're playing ITC Mission 5. And, oh, I got one guy here. I gotta put him down. You gonna go first? Alright.
Alrighty, so playing Necrons, and I haven't played Necrons. Sorry, I lie. I have played one game of against Necrons in 8th edition, and that was against one of my friends who was playing Scarab Farm. So I haven't actually played against Necrons that's got, you know, all the Necron, you know, these Doom Scythe. We've got they're not Annihilation, but what are they called? They've got the big las cannon thing. I really should know this. My apologies. Anyway, he's got lots of long-range shooting, and he's got pressure. He's got the 3 characters that do like Necron version of an order, plus the buffs that last the whole turn. It was really interesting list. Lots of warriors, lots of immortals, a big unit of Praetorians, and he can teleport once per game, and yeah, it was really interesting. I wasn't sure what to kind of do, but I had an idea. I spread out my base. I put a lot of them within that big ruin. You can see there's 2, 4, 6 Bibles in that ruin, but then spread the other Bibles around. Put 2 Morlocks out of line of sight of one of his big barge things, but took the full force from the other barge and the Doom Scythe. They do a lot of damage. I think it's like D6 damage each and D6 damage each and D6 shots each one, or something like that. It's very, very painful, and it's neg 5, which means I've got a 2-up save on my Morlocks. Neg 5 doesn't care, and it hurts. It really does hurt. Anyway, so this is so Shannon, he teleports his big Praetorian unit and his Necron Lord down to my bottom right hand corner, being really aggressive, and they do a lot of damage, but he wasn't anticipating how much damage my kind of counterpunch can do, and after the game he was saying like one of his mistakes was being too aggressive with a large part of his army, because he killed 1 Morlock, 1 and 2 Bibles, I think, that first turn, something like that. And that's what, we'll say not even 200 points, 150 points. And my counter punch kills all those Praetorians, which is like 300 points, something like that, and the Lord, and an Immortal Squad, and locks something like his barge thing in combat, and holds the right hand side because he's got no more reserves. Like, being too aggressive with a large portion of your damage for little gain is always going to be tough. So I honestly think he should have taken second turn rather than chosen to go first, because he would have then got to go, right, I want to see where your big pile in, like if I drop in my Genestealers, I go for something, I kill it, but then his counterpunch will absolutely smash me. Whereas in in this other way, he kills a small part of my army, but then my counterpunch kills a large portion of his damage. That's not to say though that the warriors and the rest of his army aren't doing anything else. Like, they're still doing damage, and they're still like Gorse guns. The warrior Gorse guns, they're bolters, but they're at neg 1 damage. Neg 1 AP. They're fantastic. I didn't realize that they were neg 1 base, and they're doing work, like, just against anything, which was really great. And because they're hitting on 2s, I think they're re-rolling 1s even from the buffs or from the orders. I don't know. It was really interesting to play this game. But once I've cleared that backfield, like once I dealt with that, because I had to deal with the backfield pressure, I dealt with it and did my counterpunch, I could now start controlling the game. My Bibles are killing warriors one at a time. My Hive Tyrants, they're flying in, but their next target after killing the Praetorians is the warriors. This in a moment, we'll see one of the most amazing feats of rolling I've ever seen before. 2 Hive Tyrants shooting at 4+ save warriors. I caused 24 wounds through both of them, and he lost 4 warriors. He literally 24+ saves. We were both looking at it going, wow, that's amazing. So I was expecting to kill all of those warriors this turn, and I only killed like 4 or 5. That was through Biovores and through Hive Tyrant. And so I couldn't continue pushing through. Because I didn't make it, I then said, alright, well, I'm going to have to just kill this plane. I can't push into that because there's too many warriors still alive. I'm just going to be really defensive. I put the mist spore mines I put as blockers to my Hive Tyrants. My Hive Tyrants actually charge and kill the airplane, the Doom Scythe, which is really funny. And I really like the concept of having a melee Hive Tyrant and less guns. I'm definitely going to be trying that out next tournament. I love the Dakar Tyrants, but having both shooting and combat in the one package, I think will work really, really well. And I'm going to test it out, see if it fits my game plan. If not, I know this army works. I know this army is very strong to my playstyle. So I'm going to try different Tyranid lists alongside with Genestealer Cult list pretty much for the next 6 months, just to see what works best for me in a kind of take-all-comer list. Anyway, he is pushing forward with his characters, looking to kill off my banner bearer, etc. A lot of people are forgetting what's called the heroic intervention. So I get a couple of heroic interventions off that people were not expecting. And it happens at pretty much almost every game. I get at least one heroic intervention off that people just were not expecting. Because most people, they almost forget, because it's new to 8th, that this ability, they put themselves in a position that happens to be within 3 inches of a character. They decide not to charge that character, but they're still within 3. Anyway, the game ends, I think we're like turn 5. Yeah, I don't think it's turn 3. Anyway, and I've killed most of his army. He's just got 2 barges and a walker, and it's only going to get worse for him as we go along.
Alright, game 6, versing a new player to me, James. He's got 4 big bang blades, 2 bang blades, 2 shadow swords, because the Emperor would hate me.
That's a shadow sword. That's a storm sword.
Okay. My deployment here, mission 6, and I won the turn to go first, and normally I go second, but I chose to go first and didn't get a seize. Alright.
Okie dokie, so this is game 6, last game of the tournament, of day 2, not the tournament, and this was the matchup that in Australian Masters that I said to myself, this would be really difficult with my army, and it's why I put the Genestealer Cult in. So I'll talk a bit more now about the addition, like the changes to my list, because it's a very quick game, but I noticed that high toughness, lots of wound vehicle armies, I really started to struggle against, and stuff with like multiple Baneblades or Shadow Swords or Stormlords, I could deal with one, but doing multiples of them, I was going to be finding it hard to deal with. And so I put in, chapter approved drops, Genestealer Cult gets the better uprising, they get some relics and warlord traits and all that, and I'm going for it. They've got mind control, they've got the +1 attack strength one, and the no overwatch one, and all 3 of those were perfectly demonstrated in this game. I drop in, I get the mind control off on his big volcano cannon, I use it to kill one of his Baneblades. I then make it so no Overwatch on his Stormlord thing. I charge in, I kill it. And so that's 2 down. Next turn, so he shoots, he kills, you know, the Morlocks, a couple of Genestealers, etc. But I just do it again next turn. Mind Control, killed his last, with the Volcano Cannon, killed the last Baneblade, and then charge, smites, you know, Morlocks, pops up and all that, and it dies. So, for what became a very difficult matchup, became a much easier matchup.
Alright, so we got, what is this, round 7. I'm versing Custodes. Never versed Custodes before. And we got 2 Collectors in reserve. And that's my deployment. Lots of stuff in reserve. And still lots of people here.
So just quick recap of this game, because I couldn't use the footage. My opponent gave me first turn, which was very smart of him. And so I just shoot a bunch of Vivors to try and start thinning out some Custodes. I don't drop anything because I'm waiting for his Assassins to drop so I can counterpunch it, so I can clear that out so I don't have to think about that for my backfield. I do my first turn pretty quickly. He does his first, he drops out in his Assassins. He kills a Bivor or 2. I leave one of my Bivors kind of in the middle of the board, in line of sight of his last cannons, which is stupid. I then drop in, I kill 2 of his Assassins, I dive in, I kill probably about half his Custodes through Smites, Bivors, and Combats, because I got 2 6s on my 2 big units. So my Genestealers and then my Patriarchs. I dive in, I kill quite a few things. He hits me back and kills almost all the Genestealers, a couple of Patriarchs. But by turn 3 I've already made Guilliman go to sleep and then come back alive, and I lock myself in combat with his Land Raider to kind of negate its damage while I slowly pick through everything. He finally clears out all my Genestealers, but I've still got my Hive Tyrants alive, and through smites and shots I kill everything other than his Land Raider down to 1 wound, and that's pretty much how the game ends.
Alright, final game versing Jeremy Martino. Similar list to the Masters, and I got a similar list, so with a bit different deployment. And it's the very last game, so Jeremy at the moment is winning. Is it 7 full wins?
7 wins at the moment.
Excellent, and alright, so it should be interesting. Ynarri, 7 win and Jeremy, and I'm definitely doing a big submarine.
Alrighty, so we've finally gotten to the last game. It's been a long tournament, but I'm versing as you saw in the intro, Jeremy, who's currently coming first. Unless he gets, I think it's less than 12 points or something like that in this game, he's won the tournament. So really, I'm playing for kind of pride here, because even if I beat him, I can't jump him. Doesn't matter how big my win is, unless I prevent him from getting 12 battle points. His army, which has kind of given me some ideas about something like Spore Field, stuff like that, to push back some of these ranges. His army it's a very good Eldar army. It's something that Nick Nanavati, he just won the LVO on. A very, very similar list to this. And I knew I was going to be not in trouble, because I thought, no, I can win this. It's more, I had to be on my game, and I had to do the right pressure at the right time. I needed to pick the right targets, and I couldn't just defend against it, because I talked about this back in game 2. You can't just defend against an army like this. You have to be aggressive. But you have to be aggressive in the right time, which is why I deploy defensively to give me that space. Everything goes well right for Nick, not Nick, for Jeremy turn 1. He gets all his spells off. He chooses to go first, and we discussed this afterwards, and if he was looking to actually win the game, he probably would have chosen to go second. But his game plan is he's looking to get his 12 points, which he got easily. It's almost impossible for me to stop that. But yeah, he's jumping out. You can see the wave serpent. It's a little bit tricky there. He's put the wave serpent up kind of like on the top level of the ruin and on the ground as well, so that he can jump. He can drop in his what's it called, the Reapers, and then jump into the wave serpent like that. And because I was happy to allow him to do that, I did the same thing with my Morlock, so I could hit some of those Reapers up on the top level. Anyway, the point is, he pushes it into my backfield. He kills 3 or 4 Biovores, 2 Morlocks like they were nothing. 3 damage. Reapers do hurt a lot. I drop in with my. There was a small gap just in this backfield here. He pushed me right back. So pretty much the rest of the board has got ranges, and there's no 9-inch bubble at all. There was a tiny gap here which I could push into that ruin. I only got a 5 on the first roll, and I chose I needed to get the 6, so I did the reroll. I got the 6 on the Genestealers. I went in. I killed all the rangers up here. I actually overkilled them, so I wasted about half my firepower. So I keep saying Nick. Jeremy played a great game his turn 1. He made a couple of mistakes on turn 2, which I punished, which then let me start to snowball out of control, because he's got an elite army. So remember what I talked about a couple of games ago, which was my army is very good against elite armies. Jeremy's army is an elite army, but his is a very punishing elite army, as in it hurts a lot. So you have to play really, really smart and minimize casualties as much as possible, because he can table you turn 1 even if you deploy everything. Like it is theoretically possible. He's got enough firepower and enough pressure to do it. I've strung out my Genestealers like this, hoping to potentially catch him out with a Heroic Intervention, because remember the Warlord trait for a Genestealer cult is it gives that unit Heroic Intervention, and he's got his Dark Reapers directly above the Genestealer, so I could heroically intervene into that. I take all the shots. He doesn't do any Soul Bursts, and unfortunately the very, very, very last shot he did with his Wave Serpent kills my Primus, which lets him Soul Burst his what are they called, Shining Spears, and shoot his all the catapults and everything again for the second time, and killing most of the Genestealers. If that guy had survived, it would have been wonderful. Anyway, this is one of his mistakes, Jeremy's mistakes. He makes a charge, but it was only a very small charge. And so he was still within 3 inches of a whole bunch of my characters there. Pretty much every one of those models on the left-hand side are a character. And so I got like 3 or 4 models in Heroic Intervention. And he couldn't strike those models. I then killed a bunch of his Shining Spears. And then my turn, I could push up and with my half tyrants shoot at his Reapers and some of the Shining Spears, but all the smites and shrieks and all that type of stuff killed almost all of his Shining Spears. I managed to charge and slingshot a little bit through my charges on the Wave Serpent. You can see I'm getting some more distance in, and now his entire backfield has now collapsed. So I've killed all bar 3 Reapers. He's got 1 Wave Serpent with some characters left in it, and his Rangers. And that's how quickly an elite army can fold. I've got enough damage in my reserves, and through just some really nice positioning and pressure, I can just go boom and swing that like collapse a whole backfield. Another mistake that Jeremy did was he fell back out of combat with his Reapers to stay still onto an objective. You can just see here there's an objective there. He fell back onto the objective, but he was still within 3 inches of my Patriarch. That was the thing he fell back into combat with. So I just Heroic Intervention straight back into combat with him and cleared out most of those most of the Reapers. And he messaged me after, I think a day or two afterwards, saying that was a silly mistake they had made. And I agree. But I made the same exact mistake against David Tiho in Masters. You would have seen one of my Biovores fell back from his Assassin, but I only moved about 2 inches. Even though I knew he could have heroic intervention, I completely forgot at that time, and then he just jumped straight back in. I was like, oh, damn it. These are the type of mistakes that we all need to just not do to be on our top game. Anyway, so the game's wrapping up now. He sacrifices his last 3 units to get a point because I've got a whole bunch of models on that last point, and then I table him. So I got a big win, but he still got enough points to get the win for the tournament. The top 4 players, as you'll see on the screen in a moment, there's 7 wins and 1 loss. So all 4 of us are 7 wins, 1 loss, and then it comes back to battle points. Jeremy first, then Abby, then me, and Jason Beasley, another one from Queensland. So all up, it was a very good tournament. I did enjoy myself. It was a shame about round 1, and I talked about that already. But overall, I really enjoyed the event, and the tournament organisers were really professional and well organised.